Heart lamp. Mehran had barely moved the half-closed door, just putting a foot inside, when her father, who was lying on the divan, caught in. The drawing room and her eldest brother, who was discussing something with him in a low voice, both stopped talking and looked at her. Just as her niece Rabia came running from inside and announced, "Mehran Fupu has come, Mehran Fupu has come," Aman, her second eldest brother and Rabia's father, came out of his room, foam from the shaving soap he had applied on his chin, the brush still in his hand, and stood in the drawing room looking at her as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Her eldest, Athige, who was teaching the children the Quran in a song voice, came out to the drawing room to stare at her, unmindful of her saragu, the free end of her sari slipping from her head. Her mother, holding the tasbih prayer beads in her thin hands, stood shocked, as if asking, "Is it true? Is this true?" Her younger sisters, Rehana and Sabiha, peeped from behind the drawing room door, not caring that the chapatis they were making in the kitchen were getting charred on the tawa. Thankfully, her younger brother Atif was not at home. The whole house momentarily stood still. It felt unfamiliar to her. The mother who had kept her in her belly for 9 months and raised her did not say, "There you are, come in, my dear." And her father, who used to delight in the little girl who jumped on his wide chest, didn't have even a small smile of welcome. Neither her eldest brother, who proudly called her "my pari, my angel," nor Aman, who had insisted that she must be sent to college, greeted her. Their wives stared at her as if she was from another planet. Mehran's heart fell. It was only when the 9-month-old baby girl in her arms let out a sharp scream that everyone came out of their stupor. Her eldest brother asked her, "Where is Inayat?" She lowered her head as if she had committed a crime and replied, "He is not in town." "Then who did you come with?" "I came alone." "Alone?" A chorus rose around her as she stayed standing at the threshold. "Farouk, take her inside." Once her eldest brother's instruction was issued, Mehran walked in, her footsteps heavy and unsteady. It felt like a courtroom. Her baby began to scream, and without removing her burqa, she pushed the niqab up, sat on her father's bed at an angle, and put her breast to the baby's mouth. She hadn't washed her face. Her stomach began to burn as the baby drank. She hadn't eaten since the previous night, except for her mother. No other women could be present at this meeting. "Mer, did you inform anyone at home before coming?" "No." "Why? Why didn't you tell them before leaving? It seems like you have made up your mind to bring us dishonor." "Who should I have informed? Who is there? It's been a week since he last came home. He didn't even tell me where he was going. I wrote to you all, but you didn't reply. Didn't care if I ended up dead or alive. You wrote that your husband has gone off with some nurse, and you want us to believe that? If you didn't believe me, then you should have come and inquired. There are people who have seen them together. And what should we do after we come and see him? Say we catch hold of him and ask him about it, and he says, yes, it is true. What can we do then? Should we submit a petition to the mosque? He will say, I have made a mistake. I will make her a Muslim and do nikah with her. Then she will be a savati to you. And say we scold him some more. What can we do if he says, I don't want this woman called Mehran. I will give her talaq. By now, Mehran was weeping uncontrollably. Moving her baby to the other breast and continuing to feed her, she pulled her saragu from under her burqa and wiped her eyes and nose. A momentary stillness. That means you are all not in a position to do anything, right? No one spoke. She continued. I fell at your feet saying that I didn't want to get married. Did you listen? I said I will wear a burqa and go to college. I begged you not to make me stop studying. None of you. Listen to me. Many of my classmates aren't even married, and yet I have become an old woman. I have the burden of 5 children on me. Their father is roaming around, and I don't have a life. When a man is doing such a haram thing, are none of you able to ask him why he is doing this? Enough, Meher, enough. Her mother shut her eyes and shook her head. Yes, Amma. I have also had enough. At first, people started whispering, and then those who saw them together at the theater and going into hotels came and told me directly. And then he became bold enough to start going to her house. And after everyone scolded him, he went to Bengaluru, spent thousands of rupees, and got her transferred. Now he has been living with her for the last 8 days. For how many more days can I tolerate this? How will I survive? Have patience, my daughter. You should try to bring him back on the right path with love. Amma, don't I have something called a heart? Don't I have feelings? I cannot respect him as my husband when he has gone off like this. My body fills with disgust when I see him. Loving him is a very distant idea. It is not about him giving me talak. I will get it from him. I will not go back to that house. Meher, what are you saying? This is too much. He is a man, and he is stamped on some slush, but he will wash it off where there is water and then come back inside. There is no stain that will stick to him. Before she could reply, Aman cut in. Look how she is behaving in front of us. She must have talked like this in front of him too, and that is why he must have got angry and left. He paused and softened his tone. If the daughters-in-law of this house learn these kinds of things, that will be just great, won't it? Meher's sadness morphed quickly to anger and then disappointment. You argue very well, Anna. May God keep you well. It is true, I am the bad person. I have learned what my bad nature is. I did not go out without a burqa. He told me to discard it and wear my sari below my navel and strut around holding hands with him. But you covered me in a burqa and brought me up such that I would not even let my sari saragu slip from my head, didn't you? I feel naked if I remove it now. You filled me with the fear of Allah. I did not agree to do what he asked me to, and so he took up with someone who dances to his tunes. And now you are all afraid that I'll become a burden to you if he leaves me. That is why you are telling me to bear with it. But that is not possible now. Rather than burn in that living hell, I will take my children and work as a coolie somewhere. I will not be a burden on you all, not a burden at all. Is the fruit a burden on the creeper, Meher? Don't talk nonsense, her mother protested. Amma, take her inside and give her something to eat, her eldest brother said gravely. We will leave for Chikmagalur in 10 minutes. If there is a bus, we will take the bus. If not, we will get a taxi. We cannot dance to our tunes either. I will not drink a drop of water in your house, nor will I go to Chikmagalur. If you take me there by force, I promise you I will set myself on fire. This is too much, Meher. Those who want to die don't walk around talking about it. But if you had any concern for this family's honor, then you would have done that instead of coming here. The house that your doli goes to should be the house from which your dola comes out. That is the life of a decent woman. You have a daughter studying in high school. You have 2 younger sisters who are of marriageable age. One wrong step, and you will come in the way of their future. You say that we must listen to your childish words and go and fight with your husband, but we also have wives and children. So, go inside and eat something. He turned briefly to his brother and then back to face her. Aman, run and get a taxi. And you, Meher, if your children or the neighbors ask, tell them you took the baby to the hospital or something. What time did you leave to come here? She did not speak. It is now 9:30, Aman said. She came at 9 o'clock. The journey is 3 hours long. She must have left at 6 o'clock in the morning. If we leave right this instant, we can get there by 12:30. Meron did not stir from where she sat. Her mother and her younger sisters took turns begging her to eat, but she did not put a crumb of food or a drop of water in her mouth. When the taxi came, she did not talk to anyone. Stepping outside, the baby held tightly against her chest and her older brothers beside her, she said goodbye to none of them. Only as she walked down the last few steps did she look back to take in the house in which she was born and raised. Her eyes filled with tears. Her father held his chest, coughing. Her mother was sobbing, turning to her daughter, then to her husband, making him lie down, fanning him, sprinkling water on him, and saying to herself, "Oh God, if I have earned any bit of punya, any virtue, any merit in my entire life, let my daughter's life be sordid." Aman opened the car door, indicating to Meher with his eyes that she should sit inside as he grumbled under his breath. She used to boast, sometimes, about her pride in her elder brothers. When she was angry with her husband Inayat, she would say, "My brothers are standing like Shur-e, Babar, and if you keep acting like this, one day they will chop you up and throw away the pieces, Hushar." But this pride had been completely erased. Her brother's words rang in her ears. If you had the sense to uphold our family honor, you would have set yourself on fire and died. You should not have come here. She didn't turn to look at her home as she got into the car, neither at her mother, who she would have seen peeping through a window, nor at her sisters peeking from behind a curtain, nor at her sisters-in-law, who were probably busy inside with their chores anyway. but tears cascaded down her face from under her veil. She sat biting her lips and swallowing little sobs. The car was running fast. No one spoke. Aman was sitting in the front seat, next to the driver from the Mohalla. Could one discuss family secrets in front of him? Their journey continued in silence. She had been dice in Inayat's games of love and lust for 16 years, and after 16 years he had then insulted her womanhood. "You lie there like a corpse. What happiness did I get from you?" He had taunted her. "What have I not given you? To wear, to eat? Who is going to stop me? I am with a woman who makes me happy." She didn't notice the trees or the sights or the road. It was only when the car came to an abrupt stop and she looked out disinterestedly that she saw the house they said was hers. A young girl with a withered look on her face came running to the car from the front door, saying, "Ami, finally, you are back. I was so worried." She picked up the baby from her mother's arms, held her to her chest, and ran back inside. Mehrun took slow steps into the house. It felt empty. The other children had gone to school, and her 16-year-old daughter Salma, who suffered her mother's pain alongside her, was the eldest at home that day. Salma had sent her siblings off to their studies, anxiously waiting for her mother to return. Seeing her uncles with her mother, she had let out a sigh of relief. She was excited to see her uncles. They will drag that other woman by her hair and chase her away, she thought. She ran about like a deer, bringing her uncles snacks, boiling the tea. Mehrun was lying down in her room. Salma walked in, wiped the tears from her mother's face, fed her some mouthfuls of food, and was coming back out with the plate of leftovers when she heard a familiar voice. She ran back to the bedroom. "Ammi, Ammi, Abba has come." Mehrun pretended not to hear her and sank further into the blanket she had covered herself with. The nerves in her head were throbbing as Salma walked out to the living room. Her uncles had gone back outside, and Salma could hear the men talking. There was conversation, laughter, salams. "Eri Paya, what time did you come?" Inayat was asking. "We came just now. How are you?" "Oh, I am fine, thanks to God." "And all your du'as." Aman's voice. "Where have you been, Inayat Bai?" "Just here. Some work, doing this, and that, you know how it is. After all, we cannot just sit at home after waking up." Salma, he called. "Salma, where is Ammi? See who has come. Tell Ammi to come out." There was no sound from inside the house. "Wonder where she is," Inayat said. "She must be inside with the baby. Let me call her. Hold on." He came in and saw Salma and asked her in a low voice, "When did these people come? Where is your Ammi?" A thread of suspicion began to unspool in his heart. "Uncles came just now. Ammi is still sleeping," Salma answered cleverly. A sigh of relief escaped Inayat. "She has not woken up yet? What has happened to her?" He came to the door of the bedroom. The sight of Mehrun curled up and sleeping disgusted him. Her only claim to importance was that she was the mother of his children. Although he wanted them to, his legs did not carry him inside. She imagined how he must be standing at the door. His clothes, the stench of cigarettes, the smell of his sweat, his aging body, his large eyes. The man who had left his mark on her every nerve was a stranger to her. She stayed with the blanket wrapped tightly around her, hearing his voice. "Salma, come here. Tell her to stop with all this drama, that if she has called her brothers here to advise me, she will be tying a noose around her own neck. In one single breath, 1, 2, 3 times, I'll say it and finish this off. Tell her. And tell her that after her talaq, see if she is able to get her younger sisters and her daughters married off. Tell her this, that she is ruining the family honor in front of guests. Tell her, your mother. Let her greet her brothers. Ask her whether she wants chicken or mutton, because it is almost noon now, so tell her to start cooking lunch soon." Salma was not even there, but he spat out everything he had to say, imagining she was. Inayat and brothers, in-law, talked as if nothing was wrong. They talked about coffee prices, about the elections in Kashmir, about the investigation of the murder of an elderly couple in the neighborhood, about the Muslim girl from the Mohalla who had married a Hindu boy in a civil ceremony, about this thing, about that. The conversation continued as the pressure cooker whistle went off, and the blender whirred, and the strong smell of masala wafted in, and the chicken was brought in, and the food was ready because Mehrun had made it, and Salma ran around serving them all lunch. Meron came out from the kitchen only once, only briefly. A heavy meal later, their mouths full of tambula, Meron's brothers got ready to leave. Before they went, Aman came and stood near the kitchen door. "Use a little bit of smartness and manage all this," he said. "I will come and visit next week. He will behave like this for a few days and then come back by himself. You must be responsible. What problems some women have to face husbands who are drunkards, mothers-in-law who beat them. Thank God you are in a good situation. He is a bit irresponsible, that is all. It is you who must balance all that." Her brothers left, and as soon as the sound of the car disappeared, Inayat flew out of the house too. Salma turned to look at her mother. Her uncles had neither consoled nor helped her. She began to pulsate with her mother's grief. Her eyes had welled up when her father walked out. The house was veiled in gloom, and when her siblings returned from school, they were not able to lift it. Each had their own chores to do, each their own burden. As evening started to lose its light, lamps were lit around the house. But the lamp in Meron's heart had been extinguished a long time ago. Who should she live for? What was the point? The walls, the roof, the plates, bowls, stove, bed, vessels, the rose plant in the front yard. None of these were able to answer her questions. She didn't register the pair of dull eyes that hovered around her, standing guard. Salma wanted to be buried in her books. She was supposed to be preparing for her looming SSLC exams. But a great anxiety that could not be named kept her mother constantly in her line of sight. In the quietness of the night, Meron stared into the darkness. It was as black as her life. The children were asleep. Only Salma was still up, studying in the drawing room, her eyes trained on her mother's room. Meron's sleep had vanished. She wondered, had her battles in her family house been any easier? Her wedding to Inayat had been a month before her second-year BCom exams. She had cried, begged to be allowed to sit them, but everyone had been deaf to her pleas. A week or so after the wedding, she had hesitantly talked to her husband about it. He had laughed, called her love, darling, my heart. If you are not here, he had said, won't I stop breathing? Meron had believed that if she was not with him, maybe he might. She was happy. She had followed his every wish, and she had been the lamp that lit up his heart. Only when her parents, in-law, had passed away a year ago, did Meron finally get her husband all to herself. Her sisters, in-law, had gone to their husbands' houses. Her brothers, in-law, had gone their own ways. This old dream of having a house of her own had been fulfilled. But now that it had, her face had become wrinkled, and the veins on her hands stood out, and there was a thin shadow under her eyes. Her heels had cracked, and dirt had settled permanently under her chipped, uneven nails. Her hair had thinned, and she had noticed none of this. And maybe Inayat would not have noticed either, if it weren't for his appendectomy. And that nurse, working too much for too little pay at a private hospital, with 1,000 dreams in her eyes, who walked or maybe floated on air. One couldn't tell with her glowing skin and honey. Colored eyes that drew one in like a whirlpool, who was sliding down her 30s, and was ready to do anything at all, to secure her future and satisfy her dreams. Inayat hadn't addressed the nurse as sister. From the first day of all those days he spent in hospital, he had called her by her name instead. And then he had insulted the womb that had given him his many children. He had criticized Meron for her loose stomach and her sagging breasts that had sated their children's hunger. He made her soul feel naked too. One day he had said, "You are like my mother," and with those words had pushed her alive into hell. In the few months since he had uttered these words, every morsel of food she ate in that house felt like a sin. The feeling of being a stranger in her own house nagged at her, and the fire of insults ground her down, and so she had sought the help of her family. The night was getting darker, and the agitation in Meron's heart was hardening. She had never felt this lonely. She had no desires. She sat up on the bed. There was no one to ask after her. There was no one to tease her, hug, kiss her. The person who had done those things belonged to someone else now. There seemed no end to life, and even the loud noise from behind didn't stir her. She knew that a framed photograph had fallen, and the glass had shattered, and the frame had broken into pieces, and the photograph had fallen out, but a kind of anxiety had set up home in her, and she had no desire to sort out the mess. She slowly got out of the bed. She stared at her baby for a long time, and then walked out of the room. Her little children were sleeping peacefully. When she walked quietly into the drawing room, she saw that Selma, who had been sitting there studying, had succumbed to sleep, her head resting on the table. She stood there, next to her sleeping daughter, and began to shake. She had thought that all her feelings were dead, but the surge sweeping through her as she looked at Selma made her want to collapse. She restrained an overwhelming desire to touch her daughter and said to her in her heart, "You must be a mother to these children, my dear." Her feet slowly began to take her forward. She opened the door and stepped into the front yard. The few plants she had nurtured looked like they were weeping. They seemed to nod in agreement with the decision she had taken. She came back inside, locked the door behind her, went to the kitchen, picked up the can of kerosene, and went around the house, unable to decide where she should be when she poured it on herself. She stopped to look at her sleeping children once again before coming back into the drawing room. She didn't look at Selma. She walked quickly to the kitchen, picked up the matchbox, and, holding it tightly in her right hand, quietly opened the latch of the front door and stepped into the yard again. She stared into the darkness and made sure she thought of how she had nobody, how no one wanted her, as she poured the kerosene on herself. She was in the grip of a force beyond her control. She looked around, and no sounds reached her, and she could feel no touch, no memories were left, no relationships could pierce her. She was beyond her consciousness. But everything was happening inside the house, where the baby's shrieks of hunger had woken Selma with a start, and made her rush to hold the baby to her chest and call out, "Ami, Ami," crossing the room to where her. Siblings were sleeping, and then around the house looking for her mother, before spotting the open door and running out into the yard, and, even in that blurry darkness, seeing her mother's form and smelling the kerosene. Without thinking, she rushed forwards, with the baby in her hands, and hugged her mother tightly. Her mother, the matchbox in her hand, looked dispassionately at the girl hugging her, as if she was expecting someone else. Selma put the baby on the ground and cried, "Ami, Ami, don't leave us and go." She held her mother's legs. Selma was sobbing, and the little baby was crying on the ground. Mehran looked at them, and she fought to be free of the strange force that had enveloped her, and the matchbox fell from her hand. Selma was still clutching her mother's legs. "Ami," she was saying, "just because you have lost one person, you will throw all of us at that woman's mercy. You are ready to die for Abba, but is it not possible for you to live for our sakes? How can you make us all orphans, Ami? We want you." But more than her words, it was Salma's touch that affected her. She picked up the sobbing baby and hugged Salma to her chest, and feeling as if she was being comforted, touched and understood by a friend, Mehran's eyes became heavy, and all she could say was, "Forgive me, my darling," as the darkness of the night was thawing. High-heeled shoe. Call the world a small place, or call it big. Say that the world is round, giggle ha, and say the world has become a small village. Say something. No matter what you say, it makes little difference. If there was any difference to speak of, it vanished 5-6 years ago. Then, when someone returned from Saudi, there were no Rajas and Maharajas like them in a family. No, there were no emperors like them. From the nappies they stuck to their children's bottoms, to the toothpaste-filled plastic tubes they used, to the frills those women wore, the colorful and tantalizingly thin nighties with delicate lace, the saris that draped around them like dead snakes and showed off their curves as is, the scents that emanated with every beat of their pulses, the dress watches, the Samsonite suitcases, and then the name pendants hanging from their necks, as if they would forget what they were called. Fingers full of rings, gold bangles stacked till their elbows, bracelets. No one had to clarify that it was all real gold earrings that hung like whispers from their ears, thin cotton underwear the color of white pigeons. Was it just one or two things? What all could one describe? And then, lightweight bathroom slippers that looked like peacock feathers, chapels, sandals. When Nayaz Khan's horse of imagination reached this point, it would begin to limp. Like a weak, dried, up horse that pulled a jatka, it would shamelessly refuse to step even 1 foot ahead. So Nayaz Khan wanted to stop too, at the magical world of that one pair of shoes that always made him forget himself. 3 years ago, his sister-in-law Nasima had returned from Saudi on vacation. The Rado watch that his brother Mehabub Khan got him sat resplendently on Nayaz's left wrist. It had also sparked jealousy among his colleagues. He was only a second, class peon at the DDPI office, and Rajiva, a colleague who also ran a money-lending business on the side, expected the watch would fall into his hands someday. Nayaz was not really concerned about having to pawn it eventually. All his attention was on Nasima's shoes. Around 40, Nasima's beauty had not yet faded. though Niaz did not notice much about her, training all his attention towards his sister, in-law's feet. Her shoes had stolen his mind. Beads set out like flowers in bloom, a barely, their sparkle in them, sat on a soft black leather sole. The heels were high and tapered. It seemed like the shoes had been designed especially for her feet. When she wore them and sauntered about, it looked like she was floating on air. He had desperately hoped that after wearing those heels she would fall. Certainly she would fall, maybe break her big toe, definitely sprain her ankle. He had expected her to then leave the pair of shoes behind, and he could get them repaired and give them to Asifa to wear. But all his calculations had been turned upside down. A nasty thought appeared in Niaz's head. He could steal the shoes and hide them away the night before Nassima was to return. To Saudi. As if she had sensed this, along with packets of fenugreek powder, ragi powder, and chili powder, she packed those shoes 8 days in advance and hid them in one of her suitcases, and began to wear Liberty chepals. He felt guilty, as if he had been caught red-handed, and stopped talking to her altogether. Finally, he decided to bravely bring up the topic the night before they were to leave and ask her to give those shoes to Asifa. Although they were all up late into the night talking and doing the last of the packing, not a sound escaped his mouth. He felt stuck in a strange situation, and all his attempts to escape it were in vain. All his fight, his agitation, all this for a paltry pair of shoes, that too for his wife to wear? Towards the end of the evening he became very agitated and restless. Soon he got so bad that he began to vomit continually. A slight fever spread to his entire body, and he did not leave bed for 8 days. Because of this, he could not go to the airport to drop his brother off. Since Asifa could not go without him either, he felt sad that his brother and sister-in-law left by themselves. Nassima did not let the matter go and taunted her husband. "Aha, poor thing, boarding the plane like you are an orphan. What all did you not do for your dear, dear younger brother? You should have poured some more money there now." Even then, Mehboob Khan called his brother 1 or 2 times from Mumbai without his wife's knowledge and asked after his health. Although he tried very hard not to think such things, similar thoughts did eventually enter his brain, and Mehboob Khan began to distance himself from his brother. 2 years after he had left for Saudi, he was going back to visit his birth village on a 2-month-long vacation. He had called to inform his brother as well, and there was only 1 week left until his flight home. As usual, he had asked his brother if he wanted anything from Saudi. But even then, Niaz did not have the guts to tell his brother what he really wished for. Niaz did not have a moment to catch his breath that day. He had borrowed money from his colleagues and friends and was busy renovating the old house he lived in. So what if it was an old house? His grandfather had built it. It was the house where his mother, as a new daughter-in-law, had stepped over the threshold, dipped her hands in sandalwood paste, and left handprints on the west-facing wall of the living room. His elder brother was born in that house. He was born there too. Both his sister-in-law Nassima and his Asifa had, like exact copies of his mother, dipped their hands in sandalwood paste and made prints on the western wall of this very house. His Muni had taken her first tottering steps here, all in this very house. Within a month of each other, his parents had answered the call of the unknown and walked away from here. It was from under that pomegranate tree that their bodies had been lifted onto people's shoulders. He was now whitewashing over all these memories. Niaz had inherited the old house after his father's death. Mehboob Khan had never asked him for his share. Whenever he came on vacation, he would sleep on a straw mat, asking for little. He would sit, stroll about, and sleep peacefully wherever he wanted. Nassima, however, would not let her bare feet touch the floor. She would wear her bathroom slippers and walk around noisily. The sight of her crinkling her face and taking wide steps, as if the floor was filthy, every time she had to go into the kitchen to pour herself a glass of milk, made Niaz angry. His heart would become bitter. Asifa, though, would ignore these little irritations and trail behind her, calling her Pabi, and treating her like royalty. This so-called Pabi Nassima was reluctant but still accepted all the attention. He would not have felt bad, even if Asifa had stooped lower to cater to all of Nassima's whims. It would have been enough for him if Nassima had given her high-heeled shoes to Asifa before she left. He would have been satisfied if Asifa had walked around like a fairy just once. He would feel fulfilled if he could touch those feet after they had worn those shoes. Dreamily thinking of all this, he came back to reality with a thud. The big mango tree in front of the house came down. In the beginning, he had got people to chop its branches one by one. It was a raspberry mango tree, each fruit large enough to fill the width of 2 palms. Every year after eating his fill, he would give baskets upon baskets of the fruit to his colleagues. Tired of doing even that, for the last 4-5 years he had been selling the crop to a fruit merchant the moment the tree started flowering and getting palmfuls of money instead. But now, seeing all the space the tree occupied, he began to get irritated. Between the compound and his house, the tree had, without any consideration, occupied a space large enough to build a whole house. That year, when he waited for the fruit merchant to come during the flowering season, all Niaz Khan got was disappointment. When he went himself to meet 1 or 2 merchants, they dismissively told him, "Who wants just 1 tree, man? It is a good harvest this year. Either you bring the mangoes here yourself, or throw them in the garbage." But then he got an unexpected offer from someone. If he were to chop down the tree and get a cellar and 2 shops above it constructed, this man would take the spaces on rent and even give money in advance for them. Niaz did not want to lose such an opportunity. Maybe there was an owl sitting on his shoulder. In the beginning, he got the branches cut 1 by 1, and one day had the whole tree brought down. Arifa watched from the window and shed copious tears. She did not have many memories. They were so few she could have pickled them all in a single jar. During her first pregnancy, she had, without telling anyone, brought down a mango with a stick, the fruit a little sour, a little astringent at the top when she bit into it, and the mischievous girl hidden somewhere within her had been a part of this small happiness. She had plonked herself under the tree on summer afternoons in the early days of her marriage. Those stolen moments of love under the tree, that was all. The sourness of the raw mango, the sweetness of the ripe mango, the abundance of each fruit, the expansiveness of the shoots. Niaz Khan built it all, the cellar, the 2 shops, and alongside them his house renovation went on too. He attached a bathroom to the room his elder brother slept in. He set out marble tiles as white as the feathers of a swan all over the kitchen floor to suit his sister-in-law's delicate feet, since he wanted to exhibit his business acumen and give his brother a big surprise when he returned from abroad. Niaz hurried through all the work. He did not say anything to his brother, but from time to time, Nasima still heard highly exaggerated reports from her maternal house. Based on these, she rode on the horse of her imagination and taunted her husband, poking, cutting, and boiling him with her hurtful words, and derived great pleasure from it. She succeeded in creating a divide between the brothers, who had been as close as Rama and Lakshmana. That was why, although Niaz Khan was hurrying about to ensure that all the work was completed by the day his brother arrived, Mehboob Khan quietly returned from Saudi and went straight to Nasima's maternal house. Before, he would have stayed in Nasima's house for a week out of courtesy and returned to his own home to spend the rest of his vacation there. But now, would Nasima let go of such a great opportunity? She reined him in and made him stay on in her parents' house. In the middle of his restlessness, Mehboob Khan felt intolerably tormented, suffered silently, and stopped talking. His laughter, his words began to feel artificial. He felt as if he had lost everything of his own and became distressed. He began to get angry if he was so much as touched. He began to flare up like a mustard seed dropped in fire. He did not get peace of mind in any corner of that house. His irritation began to increase, and he started losing his temper for no reason. That was when Nasima decided the time was right for Mehboob Khan to meet his brother. If he had to lose his temper, let him lose it with his brother. What do I care, she thought, and convinced her husband to meet Niaz. In between all this, Niaz Khan, worried that he had not received a letter or a phone call from his brother, called Saudi a few times, racking up a bill of thousands of rupees, only to learn that his brother had already come to India. Agitated, he wondered why his brother had not yet come home. Just as he was calling his sister, in Law's maternal house, Nasima was stringing her husband to a bough and getting ready to fire. Finally, Mehboob Khan went home. His heart broke. He did not shed tears, but he became a sea of tears himself. Not a word came out of his mouth, though he himself collapsed. He wished he had never seen this sight at all. He wished he had not come back to India. He wished he had burned to ashes in that desert land. At least then, maybe the branches of the mango tree would have come and softly fanned him with their green shoots and leaves. The swing that he and his brother played on was going up and down from a branch of the tree. Their father was sitting on a chair below the tree and teaching him and Niaz verses from the Quran. His melodious voice was humming in Mehboob's ears now. When he remembered how, as a child, He had clung to his mother's waist, and she would hold a plate in her hand to climb down the steps one by one, walk to the mango tree, and feed him mouthfuls of food, and then make him sit on a branch of the tree and continue feeding him. It felt like someone was running a pair of scissors over his gut. This was the tree in which they carefully, fearfully climbed from one branch to the other, where they later jumped around and played like monkeys. Couldn't they at least have told him they were doing this? How could one forgive this disaster? All for greed, some little money. His brother had not even had the courtesy to ask. On top of that, Nassima continued to nag, saying, "Ree, your brother has borrowed a loan from the bank. Now it is as if he owns the entire house. Let it go, you poor thing. You don't have to bother about anything now. There is no need to take the trouble to draw up papers and sign off. The house to him. Or did you give him everything and finish it all off without telling me either?" Slowly, Nayaz Khan began to understand the secret behind his elder brother's silence. He realized that his sister, in law, had the upper hand now. But how to get out of this knot? He became restless too. However, even in the middle of his agitation, when Nassima came with her suitcases, his eyes drifted towards her feet. It became difficult to say whether his hungry eyes were satiated or not. This was because, along with a pista green Punjabi dress with Zardozi work, she was wearing a beautiful thin-heeled shoe. Her gait was attractive now because of the shoes she wore. It became impossible for him to peel his eyes off her feet, and he felt strangely drawn. Nayaz Khan had borrowed money from many people. He had borrowed from his office, as well as a huge amount from private lenders. Rajiva, who had his eyes on Nayaz's watch, had also lent him money. With all that money, he had ended up buying a second-hand fridge and washing machine, alongside renovating, whitewashing, and painting the house. After all, he was very confident that his brother would help him out financially after seeing all the work he had put into the house. But Mehboob Khan was a broken man. He found his brother's every action, word, activity, everything to be artificial. His thoughts painfully oscillated between wondering whether he should pat his younger brother's back for all the things he had done, or insult him for building a tomb over his memories. He began to feel that it was not his house at all, like he was a stranger there, like an unexpected, unwanted guest. That was why none of the facilities the younger brother had made for his elder brother moved Mehboob. Why did he not consult with me even once before doing all this? Did I become so distant, so inconsequential? When did my brother become so greedy? For what? There was no place under the cool shade of the mango tree to look for answers to these questions. The chasm between them grew wider. What voice could possibly bridge the cracks that were caused by silence? They caved in on themselves. Only Nassima's lips carried a small smile of relief. The high-heeled shoes that she wore all the time. A dark shadow of anxiety on Arifa's face. The black clouds that surrounded her eyes shone as never before. On top of that, she was 5 months pregnant. She was not showing much yet, but the pregnancy had sucked Arifa's essence from inside. She was thin and feeble, where a pregnant woman should have been happy and glowing. She had to look after money, treat the esteemed guests well, negotiate the Cold War between her husband and brother, in law, her CO sister's veiled taunts. Was it 1 or 2 things she had to deal with? She was exhausted. As if all this wasn't enough, she had an unbearable cough that raked her whole body, as if the wind was scattering dry leaves. Although Nayaz Khan noticed her condition, he did not give it priority. Mehboob Khan noticed it too, and but for his anger towards his younger brother, and fear of his wife. If not for these 2 things, he would have taken her to the hospital himself and ensured she got rest and recovered. But there was that thing called ego. The snake of arrogance had laid many, many eggs. The sun was blazing high above the house. The wind was shy and stayed hidden. Nassima, who had schemed like Manthara in the Ramayana, was fanning herself with her saragu. The coals of jealousy were burning brightly. In between all this, that young, pregnant woman was trying in vain to draw a common thread between them all. By the time 1 week had passed by, Mehboob Khan had had enough. During his most difficult moments, he felt the mango tree calling to him. He wilted not because of the heat outside, but because of the summer that raged indoors. One afternoon when he was lying down, the mango tree came close to him, and all kinds of other relationships too. The tree did not say anything. It rested its cool hands on his forehead. It was that touch that made the volcano within Mehboob begin to cool down. That was all. He did not know how long he slept like that. He did not know what kind of invisible effect it had. By the time he woke up, it was evening. The son was busy playing hide and seek. Paya, Payaji. He was awake, but he kept his eyes closed. When he opened his eyes to this distant call, she was standing in front of him. Like a fruit, laden mango tree with expansive branches, like an abundant harvest of ripe mangoes, like the deep dark leaves of such trees, like a rich, blooming flower bouquet, like a tender mango filled with the promise of life, a prominent forehead, a mix of love and respect in her eyes. Have some tea, Paya. He accepted the cup as if it was elixir. Lost in thought, he looked at her from top to bottom. She had become weak. All her life forces had dried up. She waited until he finished drinking his tea and took the cup in her hands. For some reason, it shook him. Arifa, why have you become like this, my dear? 15 days after he had come home, this was the first time he had spoken to her so gently. She did not say anything. Her eyes were full. She looked down. He was moved. After half a second, he anxiously said, "You must be ready in 15 minutes. Let us go to a good gynecologist. If you trust that useless fellow, this is what is going to happen. He is incapable of bearing any responsibility." He continued in a low voice. "By the way, you don't have to worry about dinner. After we see the doctor, let us eat at Mughal Darbar." Nasima, sprawled on the bed, woke with a start. There was no other way. The flood kept at bay all these days by sandbags now burst forth, and there was nothing to hold it all back. She leisurely got up, wore her beautiful Punjabi dress with kasudi embroidery and her high-heeled shoes, and came out to the living room. The moment Nayaz heard the message Arifa brought in, he was overjoyed. Anna is becoming normal. This was the opportune moment he had been waiting for. He sat on a cane chair in a corner of the living room and began to think. Now he could tell Anna everything. His achievement, or maybe it was his foolishness, he could place them in front of his brother and maybe get 1 or 2 slaps. Where had his common sense gone? Before all this was to happen, he should have talked to his brother, asked him for advice. His aimlessly wandering gaze suddenly stopped. A little above the ground, there were Nasima's feet, wearing the high-heeled shoes that had stolen his heart. He had forgotten about them in the turbulence of the past few days, but now, when it seemed like his brother had begun to thaw, the shoes reappeared like ghosts. Wherever she walked, his eyes would follow her. He began to think that it would be enough if she could just step on his outstretched palms. He controlled himself with great difficulty. "Mad, mad fellow, what are you doing? Go to hell. You are crazy about a pair of shoes. You are ready to steal too? Even to beg? You'll be destroyed." He scolded himself. But still, high-heeled shoes. They had some special magical power. They not only pulled him in, but had also destroyed his common sense. He had lost himself, his senses, knowledge, consciousness. He'd become obsessed. He had to get those shoes and get Arifa to wear them. This desire became so great that he forgot everything else. He sat still, as if in shock. When he came out, Mehabub stared at his younger brother for a second. Looking at his younger brother's behavior, a wave of sympathy rose up in a corner of his heart. Not expressing it, he walked out. Until Arifa's tests were completed at the maternity home, Mehabub stood there with as much concern as a mother might show. Everything else was normal, but the fact that she was anemic and suffering from high blood pressure worried him, though he did not show his concern to his wife. Nasima had no doubts that all these expenses would be borne by her husband. Not only did he pay for the tonic and tablets, he carried the plastic cover filled with medicine himself, like a servant. The sight made her fume. Mughal Darbar was a little distance away from the center. It was not yet dinner time. Nasima had other shopping to do. Material things had become priceless, and human beings worthless. Behind those material possessions, people's feelings were on sale. Things decided the relationships between small people with big shadows. A fridge had the capacity to change the life of a young bride. The different colors it came in could play holy on her young dreams. Such possessions held a prominent spot not only in the house, but also in making life decisions. People were running, having tossed their worthiness and their relationships into the air, tired, collapsing in exhaustion, sweating. They were running. Aha! The golden deer is more than roaming about. It is making everyone mad too. It has brought everyone under its spell. The tail of its magnetism, no one could grasp it in their hands. This was the grand mark of civilization. Nasima and Arifa were at a garment store. Mehabub sat on a stool and was paying great attention to the furniture, the design of the false ceiling, the way the counters were built, and so on. Nayaz Khan was roaming about, stopping before every store, staring at the things displayed in the showcases. Just as he went back and forth and was about to go to the shop where his family was, he felt as if someone had touched him very lightly on the back. That touch, feeling as if it was the answer to some unending search within himself, he stood still for a minute. When he turned to see who it was, there was no one behind him. But then, just like that, the moment he turned back, in a giant showcase in front of him, among a pile of imported products, his heart missed a beat. He kept staring, wondering if it was a dream. The center of his endless search that haunted him day and night, that which had grown roots in his dreams, in his heart, those shoes, there, in that showcase. Captivated, he stood still. Was it true? Was it false? Was this even possible? He eventually recovered. The possibility of what had seemed impossible pierced his consciousness. He walked straight into the shop, but unable to stand, he collapsed on a stool as if enchanted. He began to feel as if all the lights in the shop were focused on him, as if he was an extraordinary man. Fearing that someone else might get their hands on those shoes, he said, in a voice loud enough for the whole shop to hear. "Give me those high-heeled shoes." Mehboob Khan turned to look when he heard his brother's tone. Nasima was observing him too. Unmindful of all this, Nayaz Khan raised his voice even louder and called his wife. Having noticed Nayaz's strange behavior in front of her brother-in-law, Arifa came and stood quietly behind her husband. Nayaz had become very emotional. He suddenly got up, turned to his wife, and told her, "Sit there, sit there." Arifa was confused when she saw where he was pointing. The decorative throne, like chair, was made of thick glass planks. She worried that it might break if she sat on it. Although she wondered why he was acting so strangely, she said nothing. Nayaz took her hand excitedly, urgently, and made her sit on that throne. Arifa shrank into herself. Her fear that it might break increased. Those high-heeled shoes in the salesman's hands, a husband who was not paying attention to anything, Mehboob Khan gazing with empty eyes, and Nasima trying very hard to control the amusement playing across her lips. The salesman bent down, removed Arifa's blue, strapped Hawaii chapels, and put those shoes on her feet. The yellow metal buckle on the shoes shone like gold under the lights, but it was impossible for her feet to fit. Made for dainty-footed women, the shoes would not encompass her wide feet. Nayaz Khan was not disappointed. He sat down and set about helping the salesman, and together they crammed his wife's toes with great difficulty into the shoes. He pulled the thin, delicate strap around her heel and somehow managed to put it through the buckle. The salesman imitated him and tightened the strap on her other foot as well. Her heels struck out of the shoes quite a lot. They had cracked here and there. Their black lines stood out all the more now. It was evident that she was so occupied with household work that she never paid any attention to her feet. She was used to wearing her husband's Hawaii chapels without a care and walking about swiftly, comfortably. Now, when she saw the pointed heels on those shoes, she began to get scared. The salesman looked at the pair of shoes that did not suit her in any way and hesitantly said, "Walk a little and see, madam." She got up very carefully. Somehow she managed to stand upright. She was forced to take one slow step after another to move forward. By this time, Nayaz Khan had already run to the counter, counted out notes, and got a bill made. There was no limit to Nasima's amusement. She folded her arms to her chest and encouragingly told Arifa, "Walk now, my dear. Take one step after the other. Let's see." She suppressed the waves of mockery that were rising within her, soon failed, and balloons of laughter began to burst forth not just from her lips, but also her entire face. Stumbling, half out of fear and half out of shyness, Arifa realized that there was no way out. Although she was fuming in her heart at her husband's extremely strange behavior, she began to practice walking on the beautiful carpet. At that moment, she did not have a choice, but she began to realize that walking was impossible. After a few steps, she came back and told the salesman, "Look here, pack these shoes," and glanced around for her Hawaii chapels. Where were they? Nayaz Khan had already had them packed and was waiting for her outside the shop. Arifa's eyes filled with tears. She had to step outside the carpet and onto the shop floor now. The floor tiles were shining. Scared she would lose her footing, she began to walk very slowly. She took the supportive pillars in the shop and the showcase and finally reached the front door. Seeing the smooth granite steps leading out of the shop, she stood still for a moment. Nasima understood her predicament. She was also angry at her brother, in law's madness, and realized that he was doing all this to compete with her. But she took pity on Arifa and held her hand, telling her, "Get down slowly," until she was on the street. Once they were on the road, how could she continue holding her hand, saying, "Pai ma, pai," as if encouraging a toddler to take one step after another? She slowly let go of Arifa's hand. Nayaz Khan was out of reach and running ahead. Although he thought it was strange of his younger brother to buy Arifa shoes that did not suit her, Mehboob Khan did not notice anything else. Nasima added this to a collection in her brain, to use it to taunt her husband when the time was right, and soon became preoccupied with other things herself. Arifa, the poor thing, still fearing she might slip and fall, limped and began to walk strangely. The new pair of shoes began to squeeze her toes. Her heels, spilling out the back, were hurting too. More than that, the thin, sharp 3-inch high heels. It was okay even if she fell down. At the most, she might break a few bones. But what about the baby inside her, she wondered. She began to walk slower and slower. Nayaz, Mehboob, and Nasima disappeared into the distance. Every step she took felt like an impossible task. She had watched many young women wearing such heels with short skirts or bikinis, showing off their long, naked legs on TV. Remembering the way their legs danced, she tried to find the courage to take a firm step forward. But instead of feeling brave, she began to feel naked herself and started to stumble. In the middle of all these worries came a terrible cough that occupied her body and heart for a long time. Arifa started shaking. Once the bout of coughing had subsided, she wiped the sweat off her reddened face and stood still for a few minutes. She realized for the first time how many problems feet could bring. Arifa still did not understand her husband's demeanor. He had not shown any concern for her, forced onto her evil shoes which she didn't want and which could harm her unborn child, and swiftly walked away without a backward glance. She wondered if she should remove those unwanted shoes, and came to a conclusion that defied all her anxieties, fear, and oppression in half a second. She stood straight, put all her strength on her toes, and tried to wiggle them in the congested space. Since that hurt her, she began to stamp her heels, putting her entire weight on those pencil heels to try to bend them. Whew! She realized those damned heels had not budged an inch. Arifa had become stronger after she made her decision. Her determination gave her a strange power. She stood upright again, put her weight on both her legs, and chanting, "Left, right, left," in her heart, began to march. It was evident from the way she was walking that she did not care who saw her. She soon became less careful and twisted her left ankle. It was only because she managed to grab the shirt of a giant man walking in front of her that she did not fall. He felt his tucked-in shirt being pulled from the back with such force that the shirt buttons came up to his neck, and his collar fell all the way back. He turned around angrily, but his anger melted when he saw Arifa's condition. Though she had let go of his shirt, she was still struggling to stand up. He helped her up and gently asked her, "The shoes you are wearing don't suit you, do they?" Moments in life are like this. Having never come face to face with a male stranger before, she stammered for a moment and then said, "Yes, these shoes are not my size. They are not comfortable and are a torture. Why don't you at least remove them and hold them in your hands?" She gave him a light smile, even in that unusual situation, saying, "These are devil shoes. Even if I remove them, I'll have to wear them again and again." She lifted her right foot and stamped it hard. Forget about the heel breaking. It didn't move even a little. She felt her eyes mist over. She extended her hand, hoping she would find something to hold on to. There. When she was stumbling, whether she knew it or not, she felt it getting dark around her. Did the power go off? No. It would have turned dark all of a sudden. What kind of a darkness was this? Its touch was cool on the skin. It spread through her veins. It made her unconscious. With each second, her body became heavier, the darkness swallowing her every nerve. It strode through the door to her soul and froze her consciousness. It ate the last bit of resistance she put up, and finally the darkness entered her and sank in deep. As she was experiencing each second of that strange sensation, she saw darkness putting down deep roots into her being. Those roots descended from her brain, down and all over her face, to her neck, her chest, till they burst through her lungs, further down, and then, by the time she noticed, the roots had come and stopped near her pregnant stomach. The sharp roots then became blunt, their power to pierce reduced, the peak of darkness shrinking. That was when she realized that there were limits to the all pervading darkness as well. Suddenly, she looked down at her belly. She began to feel that although she was buried in the mists of darkness, there was still a ray of hope for her, when the life coiled under several layers began to knock on all sides of her womb. When all 5 of her senses were buried deep under darkness, and she felt as if she was far away from feeling anything, then she made miraculous contact, the movement of life within her. "Amma, tell me, my darling," she immediately answered. But when she realized where that piteous cry was coming from, her entire body became slack. Her eyelids began to close involuntarily. She felt as if her senses were out of her control, and it seemed like she was communicating with this child from a consciousness that was not hers. A moment of silence. Then, curled up in some corner of her womb, it cried out again. "Amma? Tell me, talk to me, my darling." She began to slowly rub the part of her stomach where it lay curled up like a ball. It became a little lighter at this touch. It whispered, "What has happened to you, Amma? There is a lot of weight on me." How? What kind of weight, my child, my heart? "I don't know, Amma. Your stomach's weight is entirely on me. I cannot even move, Amma." "You, my dear, what happened to you? I don't understand. The weight of your whole body feels like it is on me, Amma, and now look, I don't have any space, Amma." Tears rolled down from Arifa's half-shut eyes. "Oh, my life, what is happening to you? What can I do?" Her legs started shaking. She was determined not to fall down, but the more she tried to stand up straight, the more the strength in her knees reduced. By the time she began to think to herself that her child would get hurt if she fell down, it coiled into itself again and softly asked, "What happened to your feet, Amma?" Cutting her thoughts short, everything became clear to her in an instant. She was putting unnecessary pressure on her unborn child because of the high-heeled shoes. Her heart melted. She struggled in the dark, pulling at the buckles and trying to remove the shoes. They did not budge. Not just that, but the more she tried to pull them, the more they seemed to tighten around her feet. They began to look like a layer of skin. The more pressure there was on the womb, the less space the child had. She felt her child struggling between life and death. "I am not a mother. I am a Mahamari, a demon." A thread of awareness began to arise in Arifa, even amidst her distress. There was still time. She had to try one last time to save her baby. She looked around for her husband, but he was nowhere to be seen. He had disappeared after putting those shoes on her feet. She looked up at the sky in great distress. In that darkness, she saw nothing. In the end, a weak voice floated up. "Amma." The voice pierced through the well of her love and filled Arifa with a strange emotion, with an incredible strength that she did not know she had. She placed both her hands on her stomach, focused all her will on the child that was slowly stopping all movement, filled her heart with the innocent, sweet form of the baby who was going to be born soon, and with all her strength began to put pressure on those high-heeled shoes instead. As she continued putting pressure on them, she was drenched in sweat. Just when it felt like her womb would become victim to their pressure, those high-heeled shoes, as if from some great power, exploded into thousands of pieces, lit up like a meteor, fell somewhere, were obliterated, and then Arifa stood solid like the earth on the still, firm ground.